Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Creator Spotlight. I'm Stella, your host, and I invite here amazing guests who transform their lives and now are helping other people transform their lives too. Today, I have here with me the beautiful Lauren O'Carroll. She is a certified peaceful parenting coach. She is an ADHD specialist and the founder of the Growing Extraordinary Humans program. Hi, Lauren. Welcome to this interview.
Hi, Stella. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited about this subject because I know it is a hot topic and I know that there are so many different angles when you talk about this topic. So I'm super excited for us to communicate about it. So, Lauren, I know you share that you are an ADHD mom of two. Can you share with us how did you create this path for yourself? And how did you realize, okay, you know what? I'm just going to be honest with myself and with the world. This is who I am, and that's how I'm going to live my life. When was that moment for you?
Okay, so I guess the moment that things started to shift probably about 10 years ago. And so before having kids, and I was working, so I'd worked in advocacy for like 10 years. I'd moved across to the NHS and I was kind of managing services in the NHS. And I'd always had a drive to do something of value, something that's helping other people. I always had this drive to kind of give back. And I think that's very common with people with ADHD anyway. But I didn't really feel like I was giving enough of myself. It was operational management, and it was fun, but it was kind of like it was less peoply. And what I realized is actually where I excel, where I get my energy, where I love to the space I love to be in is in connections with other people, making connections, like getting deep, really understanding what's going on for one person and connecting with them and helping them. And I could do that to an extent in my NHS job, but it was limited. So I spent years trying to figure out what my thing was. I remember discussing it with therapists. I didn't really know about coaches at the time, but I was always trying to figure out what that thing was. And then I had kids, and I'd already had a diagnosis. I got diagnosed with ADHD at 21, so I was quite young for a woman. But when I had kids, I guess I convinced myself that somehow my explosivity, my impulsivity, my tendency to have massive rages was somehow going to be quelled when I became a mum, because I didn't see mums who acted like me. So, this kind of adulting thing, it was just going to magically happen when I became a mum. And surprise, surprise, it didn't. I became a mum, had both of my children were born prem, both of them had NICU stays, both of them were emergency C-sections, both of them quite traumatic births, and both of them didn't sleep. So I quickly realized that actually, this magic wasn't going to happen. I was still myself. I still had the same brain. And actually my brain worked even less efficiently because I suddenly had this like massive plummet in estrogen, which, because estrogen and ADHD are very much correlated. So I had this plummet in estrogen, all my hormones changed after having a baby. I was not getting any sleep and I was still ADHD. So I was much more explosive. I was much more just stressed. Like I just was stressed all the time. And looking back, I can see that, potentially I had some sort of postnatal depression. I don't really know, but I was obsessive about how she was sleeping and how she was feeding and, going on these like insane walks just to try and make her sleep at the right time because I didn't want her to cry and all of these things. And she was very high needs, my first child.
Mm.
Um, and I remember sort of sitting on the floor one day in her bedroom trying to get her to sleep when she was about 8 months old. And like, I'd probably got frustrated in the night. It was about 4 in the morning. And I remember just like under her bed, because I didn't want the blue light to affect her sleep. So under her cot, I was kind of like Googling on my phone, anger management and
Wow.
anger management for ADHD. Like basically somebody help me. I don't know what to do. I'm so angry all the time and I don't know how to help myself. Um, and there was just, I went and saw a therapist. She was lovely. I had great chats with her. Nothing changed. She was just like, yeah, completely validated why I felt the way I did, but nothing changed. And I was reading all the parenting books to try and do the right thing for my daughter. And I came across Peaceful Parenting, which really resonated with me. And I was a really, really good peaceful parent in terms of I was great at connecting with my daughter. I had great connections with my kids. I was quite good at coaching them as they got older, supporting them to kind of work through things and work with them. But the fundamental bit, the first bit of peaceful parenting is being able to self-regulate. And as an
Mm,
ADHDer, that's really hard. So, it was then I was like, there is nothing out there for ADHD parents. There's nothing.
mm,
And then, fast forward 2, 3 years, I experienced burnout at work. And it wasn't actually to do with work at all. It was to do with home life. I then, at that point, had 2 children who were neurodivergent. One of them was at school. The other one was still in nursery. The one who was at school was having loads of problems, coming home and like having these massive meltdowns. Things were just really, really tough. And I was trying to convince the school that she was neurodivergent and she needed more help. And they were just saying, nope, she's fine. We don't see any of this. And I'm like, she is. There's no way she isn't. I'm
mm,
ADHD. It's as inheritable as height. And she
mm.
doesn't act the same as anybody else of her peers. Like, there's no way that she's not neurodivergent. But no
Yeah.
one would listen to me. And eventually I had to go and get a private diagnosis. And then it was just constant advocacy for her at school, constantly checking in with what's happened at school and then trying to educate the teachers on why they need to do things differently, and meetings with the Senko and arguing with them and just being told every time that like I was wrong and like that I've got this all wrong. Um, and then the meltdowns at home and the sibling fighting and it was just so much. And she never wanted me to leave. She never wanted me to sort of go to work. She never wanted me to leave the house. And I just got so overwhelmed and tired. And there was so much paperwork to do and so many referrals to fill in and blah, 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 blah. It was like I had 3 full-time jobs. I had the job of being a parent, I had the job of being an advocate, and I had my paid job in the NHS. So I took 2 months off work. Not sort of intentionally. I got signed off work with burnout. As I say, work wasn't the problem, but it was the overwhelm of everything. And I saw while I was on work, I received an email from the person who is basically the founder of Peaceful Parenting. And, I was part of her membership and I'd done her course and I'd read all her books, and she was training parent coaches. And I was like, whoa, I've got to do this. Like,
Mm,
there's an opportunity to train as a parent coach with Dr. Laura Markham, like, got to do it. And even then I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do this, but I've got to figure out a way to then like sort of work out how to use that to work with ADHD parents. Uh,
mm,
so I kind of went in with that goal. And I did the course. It was like a 9 month, 10 month course, like every night, like until sort of the early hours, because it was in the States. And we had people training from Singapore, from, there are lots of different countries. So we had to try and find times, and it was always like 11 o'clock and, for 3 hours
yeah.
or something. So it was a lot of late nights. And it was fantastic. And then I went to train with Dr. Sharon Celine, who is the a thought leader in ADHD and anxiety and children, young people, women, I think just general adults as well, but she does lots of things, and she's brilliant.
Mm,
And so I trained with her as well to kind of get that ADHD specialism. And have continued, trying to educating myself, many other things as we continue, and we'll see.
Yeah, and it never ends because
Yeah,
when you're on this journey of personal growth, spiritual growth, mental growth, any kind of growth, it goes from one thing to the next. And what a blessing to meet those exact people that you need on your journey, on your path. And it's also interesting, right, at a spiritual level, how your daughter chose you as her mom so that both of you create this change. Yes, in this human experience you've been through so much and you're still like learning so much. We all do all the time, but at the same time it's like how many changes you're creating for all of these other parents who struggle with ADHD. And it was interesting how you mentioned that at some point you started thinking like, what can you do for her? And then you realize that, how you said, you have to learn as a parent to self-regulate in order to be able to be present for yourself and your child. But I think that's the thing as moms. Very often we first think, what do we need to do for our child? But then especially when you're neurodivergent, I think people need these extra reminders that, hey, you need to attend to your own needs first. So as you're working with so many people, helping them on their paths, you've experienced yourself and you've seen others. Parenting is already complex. It's a role that you're embracing. It's a lot of responsibility. And then when you have ADHD on top of that, it kind of adds a layer to it. So
many.
what would you say, by after working with your clients um, who are parents with ADHD, what would you say are some of the most common struggles or challenges that they tell you about?
So definitely overwhelm. I mean, that always comes up, is like there's just so much, and I don't know how to do it. I'm just stuck, help. So there's the overwhelm. And I think just even having a place to share that overwhelm, I can't do it for myself. Like, I have people that I have to talk to and go, I've got this. Even when I came onto this with you earlier, I was just like, oh, I've got so much to do. Having somebody to kind of share that with, and them to help you figure out what order to do it in, and help you see that it's possible, is like essential. And then the piece that some parents come to me with is the self-regulation piece. And nearly always, if parents don't come to me with the self-regulation piece, they come to learn that self-regulation piece is really important. So I actually work with many, because not all ADHDers are like me and are like outwardly hyperactive as well as internally, and have a rage response. I am in sort of fight or flight a lot of the time. Some ADHDers are much more kind of on the freeze side, or even past that into fawn, flop, that kind of nervous system response. And also it depends on attachment relationship, right? Attachment style. So whatever attachment style they had with their parents is the one that we tend to we then have with our children. And we can change that, but we have to do a lot of work on ourselves to give ourselves a more secure attachment style. And what I see with a lot of people who have a more like avoidant attachment style, or a less secure attachment style, is that actually their response when things get difficult, when they get dysregulated, when their nervous system's going, I can't cope with this, and when their kid is shouting, having a meltdown, ignoring them, not doing what they're told, rather than shouting at them and getting angry, they might withdraw. They might like literally sort of put up the emotional gates and stand behind it and just withdraw, which is no better really than exploding. Our kids need us to be emotionally available. So sometimes that takes quite a lot of work with clients to realize that actually they're not just not shouting. And this can be hard, right? Because they might think they're doing really well. I don't shout. I'm not a shouting person. I'm not a shouty parent. Okay, but are you emotionally present? And so we do a lot of work looking at our triggers, our stressors, and our emotional responses. And our brains are plastic. They can mold and adapt. It's much easier in children, which is why it's so powerful to do the work as early as possible with your own kids so they don't pick up the patterns that you have, because parenting is 80% modeling. So if I'm an explosive, shouty mum, which I'm very open about, I am still an explosive, shouty mum. But, rather than exploding and shouting 8 times a day, I now explode or shout 2 times a day. And then I do the crucial bit of repairing with my kids. Would it be better if I didn't explode and shout at my kids? Probably. But I'm still on a journey too, and it's really, really hard. And I want to be a place where parents can come to me and be open about what they've done, because there's a lot of parenting coaches out there who are nailing this much more than me, because they are wired to be more peaceful than me. I'm not wired to be peaceful, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because it's bloody hard. Sorry, but it's really hard.
Mm.
And we need a space where we're not shamed for the way that we're wired, and we can learn a different way. And one of the analogies that a therapist once told me, actually, which I found really, really powerful, and I think about a lot, is with something like meditation, which I find really hard. I teach meditation. I help my clients with meditation, but as an ADHDer, it's something that feels really hard for me. But we kind of talk about when you're feeling like you're going to shout or withdraw, when you get dysregulated, there's you've got to get from this place to this place, right? You've got to get from where you are now to the release of whatever that thing is, and to get your child to do whatever you want them to do, whatever the situation is. And there's a motorway that can get you there, like this road here, or there's a windy path. And the motorway gets you there super quick. So that is the one we use. We shout or we withdraw. We have our sort of automatic response.
Mm.
And when we meditate, when we practice, when we're calm, not when we're about to explode, but when we practice and practice and practice, taking another path, it's a bit like sort of going through the forest. And first time you've got to do it, it's really uncomfortable, it's really hard. And maybe you have to bring some loppers, maybe you have to bring a saw, and you've got to kind of create a bit of a path. And then the next time you do it, and you've kind of got to climb over things and push the undergrowth down. And the more you do it, the more you're creating a path, and the easier that becomes. It's never going to be as fast as the motorway, but it's going to be more peaceful. It's going to be more interesting. It's going to be prettier. You're going to notice things along the way. And I think about that when we're rewiring our brains. When we meditate, we're basically taking that other path, and we're making that other path another option. So sometimes we will go down the motorway, but the more we practice going down the other path, that becomes another option for us as well.
I
And so
love
that's how
this.
so that's how I talk to parents about it. It's it's
Mm.
hard. It is hard, but it makes
Yeah.
everything. It gives you another route. It gives you another option.
Absolutely. And then when you take that other path that doesn't take you there the fastest possible, it's like being more mindful. And I know that you practice a lot of mindfulness in what you do as well, and being present in that moment. And it's like you walk on the street, and there is a difference between you just putting your head down or just going very fast and walking slowly, looking at the flowers, looking at the trees, really observing the details as well. It makes such a big difference, because then you'll notice something that you never thought, or that you never even noticed it before it was there. And it really makes our whole experience such a beautiful, rich experience, because we connect with everything around us. So, I really love this point that you mentioned, how, as parents, I mean, we were children at some point ourselves, and we are used to a certain type of connection with our parents. And so when we know that we want to do it differently in the experience of us being parents, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. So part of your work is to help parents break these generational cycles. So I know you mentioned it's a lot about being attached, maybe in some sort of ways, to used to being attached to your parents. What are some other types of generational cycles that you feel your clients are breaking? And also, if you want to share, was there a generational cycle that you had to break yourself?
Many. So I think one of the key things when working with neurodivergent parents, and not all the parents I work with are neurodivergent. I work with parents who are neurodivergent and parents who are neurotypical and have neurodivergent kids, because I can help them understand their child's brain from a different perspective. But I think one of the things that most of us, I'm being very broad here, but most people who are kind of in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and probably older, were raised with shame. So you should be ashamed of yourself. Go to your room until you calm down. Don't speak to your sister like that. Why can't you be more like your brother? That kind of language is deeply shaming. And when we hear those kind of messages, we're not learning anything from it. We're just getting defensive. And shame is a great evolutionary tool which kept us safe. So when we were, and I always end up talking about like back when we were like cavemen, cave women, because so much of the ADHD experience is perfect for that, but it's not so good for now. So, you know, we have our nervous system responses, and ADHDers have these like very, very hypervigilant nervous systems, which means that we react super quick. It also means we're brilliant in an emergency, but when things are calm, we're not so great. Shame is what keeps you understanding social norms, social rules. So if you imagine that you're sort of in an environment, in like a village somewhere, and you've got your elders all sitting there having a meeting, and you're I don't know, 10-year-old child, 8-year-old child who runs up to say something to their mum impulsively because you're ADHD. And like the chief says, like, looks at you and just gives you a look, and then everyone turns and it's all silence and everyone looks at you and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And you kind of go away, and it's like you have this, your stomach drops and you're just like, whoa, like that was completely not okay. And that's how you stay safe in that society, because you learn that feels so bad, you're never going to do that again. We grow up, we're now in a society where a differently wired brain is not really accepted. But there's nothing we can really do about that. So we go into a school system and our brains aren't working for it. Most parenting is done through shame. So kids with ADHD, kids with autism, kids with differently wired brains are constantly getting the message that you're too much or you're not enough. And the difference between shame and guilt is, rather, guilt is about like, I've done something wrong, like my behavior was wrong. Shame is I am wrong. And so these generational patterns of like, I am wrong, I need to sort of fit in, I need to notice what everyone else is doing and fit in, is huge in the groups of people that I work in. So that is one of the big cycles that I try and change, is we don't shame. We don't, we accept, we love unconditionally. There's a wonderful book called Unconditional Parenting by Alfie Cohen. And it's, the whole premise of it is basically like, you have to love your child unconditionally and parent them with love and empathy, so that they can learn to do the same and to love themselves. Like the way that we talk to our kids is the way they're going to end up talking to themselves. And with the parents, when I'm working with them, I'm helping them to talk to themselves in the way that they're talking to their kids, because they need to talk to themselves in that way. They need to hear that. They need to reparent themselves so that they can believe that they are good enough, that they're not too much. They need to learn to accept themselves. And self-compassion and self-acceptance is something I'm working on daily with myself, because it's really, really hard. If you've had a lifetime of not feeling like you quite meet the expectations of you and what is socially acceptable, it's really, really hard. And we mask, and that puts us into burnout as well. And that makes us shout at our kids and shame our kids, and the cycle continues. So it's about kind of breaking that cycle. And it takes time.
it takes time. And also I think when you look around and you see that an adult did something that was wrong within the society, I mean, some of the things that can hurt others, that's what I mean by wrong. You then, if you look back into their history, you will see that maybe they had a difficult upbringing or a difficult connection with their parents, and then their parents had a difficult connection with their parents. And it's such an important topic to talk about, like breaking generational cycles, and it's just working through them, really understanding where it's coming from. And I love that you are working very holistically with this all. You're not looking just at the parents or just at the children. You take it all in consideration, and you're just aware. You're guiding them to be aware of where they're at in this story of their own life. So I know that you created a beautiful program, Growing Extraordinary Humans. What is this program about, and how does it help people?
So my idea for it was basically, we often consider ourselves to be a little bit extra for ADHD. We might consider our kids, even before you've got a diagnosis, you might be like, or if you may never get a diagnosis, but you might be like, yeah, my child's just a bit extra. Or you might describe someone's child as being a bit extra, like it's an extra something. And I want to take parents from seeing it as being extra to finding that extraordinary potential, both in themselves and in the humans that they're growing. And the reason it's humans and not children is because my premise with everything parenting is, the way that I teach parenting is not going to give you quick wins. You're not going to get that compliant child who's like, yes, mum, no, mum, and that one that you see skipping out of the playground. You wouldn't come to me if you had a child that's got the potential to be like that. They're just not wired that way. What we're doing is we're growing like adults, essentially. Like we want to have a child who grows up into being somebody who knows their own mind, has autonomy, and like can challenge different thoughts and question things and not just kind of agree to everything. We want a child or an adult who has a really good sense of self, who has a really strong moral compass, who knows who they are and what their values are and goes out to try and get them, who fights for social justice, who decides what social justice means, all of these things. We don't want somebody who's just going to go with whatever they're told to do all the time. That's not what we want. So that's what the whole premise of it is. And it's kind of divided into three. So I think about it as growing a tree. So you've got roots, so you can't do anything until your roots are secure. So that's about like looking at the parent and what do they need in order to be able to self-regulate. That's basically our self-regulation bit. So are they looking after themselves? Are they looking after their nervous system? Do they understand why they're getting triggered, and how do they reframe some of the ways that they're thinking about things? Then we move on to nurture, which is kind of all around connection. I have a framework in there called leaders, which stands for the things that I think that if you do daily with your kids, they're going to be much better connected with you, much happier, have less meltdowns, etc. So we've got laughter, allowing all emotions, always having empathy, done that in the wrong order, LEA, D, dopamine hits, so purposely helping your kids to think about ways to get dopamine so they can do the things that are hard, routines, and special time, which is like one-on-one time. If you do them every day, things are going to already get better. And then the last bit is space, and that's around help, like coaching your child to work through difficult things, problem solving collaboratively, setting limits with empathy. So our kids do need boundaries, they need limits, but we can still understand their point of view and be empathic with it. So that's kind of what the program is around. And I have different, I've got like a community membership with different tiers. So I've had like a really accessible one for anybody who's going, oh my gosh, I've got an ADHD diagnosis, or I don't have one, but I feel like there's neurodivergence going on and I just don't know where to go from here. I invite lots of different experts in to talk to us and help with things. And I provide coaching in there. And then I've got like different tiers with different levels of support that I put in to support parents. So yeah, I love it. It's a really
Yeah.
exciting, I think it's got a lot of potential.
Mm.
But it's just about reaching the right people and helping people, because I was so stuck. And so many parents I meet are so stuck. Even the advocacy in school bit is just, yeah, like I said, it's like a full-time job. And
Yeah, and I can feel your passion, like as you're talking about it, and this speaks volumes. And I think we need to connect with somebody who is so passionate about what they do in order to kind of create a collaboration, because you can also provide so much information, but it's also about the person who comes into your space. They have to be open to those experiences, and they want to feel curious. They need to feel curious about like what's in there, how can I discover it, how can I work with it. And I also know that you are now working on something super super exciting, and some of our viewers might watch this interview immediately after we posted or years after we posted. So talk to us about this amazing project that it's so close to being shared with the world.
yeah, so I'm writing a book called Parents Have ADHD Too, how to be calm when you're wired for chaos. And it's basically about being a parent with ADHD, understanding why it's hard, validating your struggle as a child. And then we talk a little bit about, well, quite a lot about nervous system, about connection, about ways that you can help yourself to be a better parent, but also a happier parent. Like it's a book
Mm,
about like the parents. There are parenting tips in there, but it's more about kind of like that validation and that like you're okay and this is how things are hard. And there's also chapters on like mum and dad, because the
mm,
experiences on mum and dad are very different. I touched earlier on estrogen. There's lots of bits and pieces that can really help to understand where you can get different bits of support based on where you are in your life.
mm.
So yeah, I'm very excited about that. Yeah, can't wait to share it with the world. I think it's a book that's needed, because there's loads of books on like how do you raise your ADHD child, but I'm yet to see anything on how do you parent when you're ADHD. So
And you're bringing this into the world. I'm super excited about that. To everyone who's watching us, please check out the description of this video to know how to connect with Lauren and to see her book and to order it and join her programs, especially if you recognize yourself as a parent who has ADHD. And just as we're wrapping up this episode, Lauren, if you could share one simple step that anyone who is a parent with ADHD can start doing today to kind of improve their life, something very simple, what would you advise?
I think it is about starting to notice your emotions in your body. So an emotion lasts in your body for, they think, somewhere between sort of 40 to 90 seconds. And we resist emotions. We're not very good at feeling emotions, particularly if you're ADHD. But if you don't get stuck in the story of why you're feeling this emotion and why you're cross or why you're upset or whatever, and you just notice where it is in your body, and you just take some deep breaths, some long, slow exhales, which brings in the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our calming nervous system. Take some long, slow exhales and just notice what is happening in your body, whether your stomach feels tight or butterfly-y, whether your shoulders are tight, maybe there's a lump in your throat or your chest. Just noticing where that energy is, and just sitting with that discomfort. It won't last very long, but emotions keep bubbling up to be heard. They've got messages for us, and if we can make space for that, then that message isn't going to have to come up again. So, if we just kind of ignore it, push it down, we're just going to feel even more overloaded with stress and things get harder. So I kind
Mm,
of see it as a bit like unpeeling the layers of an onion. The more you can sit with those emotions and notice them, the less they're going to crop up for you. It's like a bruise coming out, let it come out. Don't push it back in. Don't stick another plaster over it.
mm.
Sit with it. And I think that can be really life-changing for people, even if they do nothing else.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you so much to everyone who's watching us. If you're new to our channel, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, like this video, let us know your thoughts, and connect with Lauren and myself. Check out the description of this video. Thank you. See you again soon. Bye-bye.